Welcome on in to the Georgia Show. We got Rhett Womack in the comments already. Cameron Youngblood making his live debut. Can't wait to hear y'all's insight. First time listening live, dedicated podcast listener to both the Georgia Show and Bark After Dark. Hope we don't disappoint, Cam. Lionel Hutto checking in from Plant City, Florida. Big Aaron Murray fan, I can only assume. Go Dogs. All right. Jake Rowe, what's happening, man? Big week for practice updates. And I was just thinking, Georgia hasn't really had any significant injuries yet. And then Lawson Luckie gets hurt.
Yeah. High ankle sprain for him. Kind of fortunate that he's not caught in AD Mitchell land, where AD Mitchell couldn't have the tightrope surgery last year. It sounds like from everything I'm hearing that Lawson Luckie is able to have the tightrope surgery, which should bring him back a little quicker. Arian Smith had it last year. And if I recall correctly, I did some digging on this, Wes. Arian Smith had his right at the beginning of preseason camp, and he was probably, again, if I'm recalling it correctly, was cleared around week 2 or week 3. But he ended up playing, that first game in October. He ended up playing against Missouri. So, it's not going to be forever, but for a freshman, it's different, right? I mean, Arian Smith was in year 3 of kind of learning that Todd Monken offense. Lawson Luckie is going to miss a lot of valuable time. This week is a big camp week. I mean, they're starting classes back. They started back today, but this is still camp mode. This is still get better, learn, install, all that stuff. He's going to miss some time, and that's going to set him back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about what this period of time means for a freshman, and he was an early enrollee, so he got some time to, soak things in and soak things up like a sponge. But right now, it's the real deal. You're really preparing for the run up to a real game right now. So yeah, it almost seems like it could be an exponentially big setback for him. Not that he can't overcome it eventually, but this is a critical time.
Yeah, no doubt. And then you had Pierce Spurlin, right, who, Pierce missed pretty much 12 practices in the spring. He was hurt in the first fully padded practice that first Saturday of spring, and then missed the next 4 weeks. Missed 3 total scrimmages, there. So, and not only that, I mean, he's a guy that, really needed to fill out there too. So, Georgia's definitely not as deep as this year as they were last year at tight end. There's no doubt about that. There's no questioning it. Not even without the injuries, they wouldn't be, but it's in terms of experience. But with the injuries, it adds a degree of difficulty there, and further feeds into that whole idea that Georgia might spend some more time in 3 wide receiver, 11 personnel, as opposed to 12 personnel that they really almost based out of last year.
Yeah, for sure. We heard from Oscar Delp as well, and I loved his remark about everybody wants to be like Brock Bowers, but he's just trying to be the next Oscar Delp, and he's going to go a long way in this tight end room, helping its depth out. And I don't know what kind of formations or what kind of platoon Mike Bobo had in mind, but I imagine we're definitely going to see a lot more of Oscar Delp now than we may have if Luckie didn't get hurt.
Well, yeah, I mean, I still think you were going to see a ton of Oscar Delp, and I think that Luckie may have spelled him a few more snaps a game than maybe Pierce Spurlin's ready to do at this point, but. Delp and Brock Bowers are your guys there. And what I'm really interested in, Wes, is, all right, well, this shortness at the tight end room, right? Well, does that make you kind of take Brock Bowers out of some specialty roles that you may have used him in? Like we saw practice yesterday, for about, 12, maybe 15 minutes. I don't really do a count. I don't like to look at the clock. I try to look at the field, and we were watching this quick, I think Kirby Smart has called it the Millennial Oklahoma drill. I think it's he calls it that, but it's basically just kind of
they don't do it in a parking lot,
right? It's kind of a perimeter screen type deal where they're really getting after it. And Brock Bowers lined up, kind of beside the quarterback in the shotgun, took a swing pass. Well, are you going to continue to maybe use him in a role like that and find creative ways to get him the football if you're kind of shorthanded at tight end? I don't know. I don't know how they're thinking about that. Maybe they don't think there's any more risk involved with that. Maybe they do. These coaches kind of, they got weird brains sometimes, man. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I mean, Kirby thinks that if we watched 5 more minutes of practice and saw that next period of them, maybe working their dime defense, that maybe it might prevent them from winning a national title. These guys are pretty odd thinkers sometimes. And, that might be something that's on their mind. It could have a chain reaction throughout some stuff. But I suspect since Saturday, they've known they were going to be without Lawson Luckie for a good little while. And again, that tightrope surgery, if that is indeed what he's had, I can't confirm it, but that's what sounds like is happening. That'll bring him back quicker than it would otherwise, or they wouldn't do the surgery.
Yeah, and AD Mitchell was just kind of on the fence with that last year.
Right.
There was a Tennessee receiver that had it. Was it
Cedric Tillman?
Tillman. Yeah.
Cedric Tillman had it.
And he got right back in action. He's doing all right for himself.
Sure.
On the other side of the ball, had some questions on our board about AJ Harris working with the first team as it relates to Kamari Lassiter, and pretty much shouldn't read too much into that at this point, right?
No, listen, I think honorary DawgsHQ staffer and friend of the Georgia show and Bark After Dark, Matt Godwin, chimed in on that one and said basically that fastball period that Georgia was going through, when we saw him with the first team, is not a reflection of kind of first team offense, first team defense. They like to mix and match it there. And it's that portion of practice is basically, can a guy get a call, line up and play? And that is a really, really fast part of practice. They're trying to set the tempo of how they want to practice that day. It's a very quick period. They only did it for, Wes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And they did it so fast that they got three offenses and 3 defenses on the field, separately. So, I was more impressed by what I saw out of AJ Harris when Georgia was going with that Millennial Oklahoma drill, because I cannot remember who the receiver was. But he knocked the fire out of somebody. He just stuck and to the point he got up and kind of got in his feels there for a minute. He was so fired up about it. But he's going to be a really good player at Georgia. And honestly, I'll be honest with you. I think he's got plenty of talent to play cornerback, but I think if he was the kind of guy that would walk into Kirby Smart's office, and maybe he is, maybe he's done this, I don't know. I think if he were to walk into Kirby Smart's office and be like, "Hey, coach, I want to be the best star I could possibly be," I think he could be an absolute freak show. I think he could be the best star, that Georgia's had. That's the Javon, but at least from a coverage standpoint, because he brings. You don't see a lot of cornerbacks. Your home. I think Todd Hartley talked about this, or maybe it was Mike Bobo, but one of these guys talked about it, where you've got to have a home base. Heck, it may have been even Glenn Schumann. I think it was Glenn Schumann. So I've ran through 3 of the 4 assistants we've talked about. But it was Glenn Schumann. It was Shu who said this. He said, you got to have a home base as a player. Well, I can't really recall. Tyreek McGee, I guess, and maybe a little bit of Mark Webb, that their home was at cornerback, but they played star. More often than not, it's kind of been your home's been safety and you've played star. So I would be really interested to see if he ever got a look at that, but I still think he can be a fantastic corner as well. Georgia's just got a lot of dudes at corner, man. A lot of dudes.
Is that maybe Georgia's deepest position group?
That or inside linebacker. It's one or the other. That's how awesome is it that you're that deep at those 2 positions? You're deep at the position that is going to rack up a ton of tackles and is going to call your defense, and you're deep at the most premium position on the field. And let's not forget that in addition to Nyland Green and AJ Harris and Dalen Everett and Daniel Harris and Chris Peel and Kamari Lassiter, who could very well decide to come back next year, they're also adding the number 4 prospect in the entire country and the nation's number 1 cornerback in Ellis Robinson, who is as ready to play coming out of high school, in my opinion, as any cornerback we've seen the last few years.
Yeah, we're going to get to Ellis later on in the show. It's interesting to look at those 2 position groups specifically back in the secondary and at middle linebacker. And you think about Kirby Smart's career, obviously he played in the secondary, and think about the dudes that played for him all the way back to his Alabama days. I know he talks a ton about building up that line of scrimmage, but if there's a hallmark of Kirby Smart's defense, it's just having wave after wave after wave of players in those groups. And, we've seen it just get better and better every year. It seems like, I keep saying it. I said it 2 years ago. I said it last year. Kirby Smart finally has the defense he's always dreamed of, and it just keeps getting scarier.
Yeah, for sure. And, in a lot of ways, I know that they'd like for the pass rush to be more dynamic, but, I'm a Denver Broncos fan. I've been a Broncos fan for, all the way back to the early Terrell Davis days. And even before that, long story short, we had a redneck satellite dish, and, we got Denver affiliates, and, for NBC, ABC, CBS, we couldn't get the locals because we didn't have the antenna, and get WALB out of Albany. Not Albany, Albany.
Of course, yeah. They just didn't have the strength down there in Albany.
Yeah, Albany was about, an hour and a half away, and sometimes it was tough to pick up WALB. But the Broncos won a Super Bowl on the strength of having 3 stud cornerbacks and being really good, having a really good pass rush. I mean, they had Aqib Talib. They had the Roby kid that's from Georgia and played at Ohio State. And then they had I think his name was also AJ Harris, or I can't remember, something Harris. But I remember those guys and those 3 cornerbacks. And when they went nickel, it was lockdown. And then you put on top of that having Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. It was such a dynamic, shut you down. I mean, if you get ahead of a team with those ingredients, they're done. Mm-hmm. They're absolutely done. They cannot chase points. You jump out 21-0 on a team or you carry a 14-point lead in the halftime, and they've got to throw to catch up. I mean, you will absolutely just slice their throat every time. And I think that's something that Georgia can achieve. With some of this young talent, they've got it outside linebacker. With Marvin Jones, with Darius Smith, with the guys that they signed this past year, Gabriel Harris and Samuel Mpemba, Damon Wilson. I mean, they've got a lot of talent at that young talent at that outside linebacker position. They got a lot of young talent at cornerback. Now that, Wes, I think if they could get those 2 things together at one time, would be Kirby Smart's dream defense. They almost had it. I think they lost a little bit of focus, and the COVID year may have hurt them a little bit. They almost had it with that, Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell and Azeez Ojulari and Jermaine Johnson. I think they were close to getting that one to click, but it didn't quite get there because that year just got so weird on them. But I think, and also I think they
had like 4 quarterbacks that year that they're trying to figure out.
But they were bad on defense at times that year too. Yeah. I mean, what Florida and what Florida and what Alabama did to them is atypical of what happens to Georgia defenses. And so I think that was, the defense wasn't as good as it could have been.
Well, Will Muschamp showed up and reminded everybody how to do it.
Yeah, that and they simplified some stuff. I mean, I think Kirby has come out and said that is they had rules on top of rules on top of rules that Florida, Dan Mullen kind of figured out how to exploit, and Alabama already knew how to exploit, and that kind of got to him a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when you're playing ball like that Denver Broncos defense you mentioned, it doesn't really matter who your quarterback is, but it doesn't hurt to have a good one. And that allowed Peyton Manning to ride off into the sunset. Brian McPhail's asking, when does Georgia make the decision on QB1 so they can get ready for the season? I mean, they still got some scrimmages to go.
Yeah, they got 1 scrimmage left to go. Then they'll dress rehearse, and then they'll scrimmage against, UT Martin, basically. I mean, that's basically what that'll be. It just, they won't have to play each other. They'll get to hit somebody else. I mean, these first 2 games are going to kind of be scrimmages. I don't anticipate them being in any sort of big hurry to name a quarterback. Just like I'm in no big hurry to say anything, nice about Jake Roos.
Mountain Jake.
Welcome.
Bring Bill Shanks this time.
Yes, indeed.
I'm going to take some questions.
No F-bombs on the Georgia show, though.
I'm going to take some questions from the board, and let's hop around. A couple about the running back position. Everyone is wondering about that right now. Backs getting dinged up. AC Dog 61791 If that's not somebody's burner, I don't know what it is. This person asks, when do you think Branson will be back? Branson Robinson, any insight to his improvements this spring and summer? Still think he's the next special running back at RBU. He was in a non-contact jersey at practice the other day, right?
Yeah, he was, but he's doing drill work, and I think that's very, very, very positive. I think there's a good chance he's back before the end of October. Before the end of September, before the start of October. I think he's got a good chance of being back at some point in there. I mean, may see him start to work in maybe around the South Carolina game. Still a few more weeks to go. I'm really interested to see how it plays out. Smile Munn and Branson Robinson, both of them kind of have a similar foot injury from what I understand. They're both bearing weight and getting after it. We'll see how it goes, but I think there's a definite chance that he's back before the end of October. Oh, sorry, I said it again, September.
Okay, so that's putting him around, what is that, the Auburn game maybe?
Yeah, Auburn in September. Yeah, not that I needed to be reminded.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it.
Makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, it makes me ill as well. Definitely makes me sick. All right. Look at that guy. That's Branson Robinson, by the way. When he is back, he looks mean. He doesn't even have his helmet on all the way, I don't think.
Biceps.
He's been in the weight room. All right, Glenn H., big fan of the show. Do you think Roderick Robinson is RB1 as of today? If Georgia went out on the field today, is Roderick Robinson RB1?
No, it's Dejon Edwards. I think Dejon Edwards will be running back 1 right now.
I do. I'm of the mind, though, personally, that I think Roderick will get some good run, especially early in the season. I think that you'll see plenty of Roderick Robinson early on in the year, in my opinion. Anyway.
Rob.
Yes, I don't think I haven't thought of that already.
Rob.
Yeah. Say Ramrod.
Ramrod. Hey, that's all I could think about when Rusty was at that KJ Bolden commitment and there was an open bar is Officer Rod Farva, baby.
Give me 6 Schlitzes.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Rusty hightailed it out of there, man. At least he says he did. I don't know. I think he might have hung back.
I would have stuck around for the party. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was impressed with Rusty's discipline.
I may have needed to find a room in Flowery Branch, brother.
You never get that from a commitment, man. You don't. I mean, like the only time I can even think of something similar was like Rashad Roundtree. They had like some brunch they brought in for us. That was
I remember that.
You remember? It was like in the principal's conference room.
Yeah, me and you and Jerry Hamilton.
Yeah,
he was with ESPN at the time. Now he's with our Texas site. I know Rusty was at this one when we weren't, but Sage Harden's commitment ceremony was apparently a first class affair.
I would believe
there was an open bar at that one as well, and there was some steaks and some
heavy hors d'oeuvres,
some shrimp cocktail and things of that nature. I mean, really sounds like what it would be for me on death row, but. Oh man, I wish I'd have went to that one.
Execute me at this kid's commitment. All right, what else we got? How many sacks does Michael Williams get this year? This is from Munson's Broken Chair.
Ooh.
I will say, I'll just set a line. I'll say over under 3.5.
Oh, over.
Over?
Yeah, I'm taking the over on that for sure.
Yeah, I think 17 or 18. Somewhere in there. I'm cashing in on my Dana Point right now. I'm just kind of jumping in on my man right here. No, I think it'll be somewhere around 8 to 10.
Okay,
7, maybe
I really
7
lowball him. I'm not in a.
Yeah, I was gonna say double digits to me doesn't seem totally out of the question. Now I'm not saying it's gonna be 17, but 10 seems doable.
And I'll tell you why. Double digits. I think Roos. I think you're spot on here. Is unlike an outside linebacker where Georgia likes to put a guy on the field on first and second down that can play the run, and then they like to switch that guy out and get him off the field on third down and get a fresher body on the field. That position, Michael is going to be on the field first and second down, And then he's going to cycle back and he's going to play a different position on third down and get matched up against guards. And I think that his ability to kind of rush the passer and play more snaps than those guys is going to be just massive. That, and combined with the fact that there's also going to be times where he gets to come in and eat on third down because Tramel Wilder is one of the nation's. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, somebody I trust, and they were talking about that, how their metrics and how they look at things, that Tramel Wilder is one of the best run defenders in the country in terms of his ability to strike blockers and get off blocks. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling to think about what he has grown into there. And guys, that's why he started 13 games last year. I mean, that gets forgotten. Michael started the first 2. He did a really good job, but Tramel came in and started those last 13 because they're like, hey, this is our run stuffer. This guy can strike blockers and take up 2 gaps and do exactly what we want him to do. And I think he's going to do a lot of that dirty work. And then Michael's going to come in on second and long, third and long, pin his ears back and try to, make somebody look stupid. And he's going to overmatch a lot of dudes this year too, in my opinion.
I think too, we're going to be talking about at this time next year, we're going to be talking about Michael Williams, the way that we're talking about Brock Bowers in terms of like what the NFL thinks about him, where this is all headed. I'm not saying he's going to end up on the Georgia Mount Rushmore, which we did today, but I think that he has a chance to garner the hype based on this year that Brock's kind of leaning into this year based on just his level of ability. I think that Michael is a guy that is going to have the NFL drooling over him after this season.
Who was that defensive end, that 5 tech that got drafted by, I believe it was the Washington football team? What's their name now?
Chase Young?
No, he played at Alabama. I think his last name was Allen.
Is
it Jonathan Allen?
Yeah, it was Jonathan Allen. It was.
Okay.
Yes.
There was another Jonathan Allen too, right? When there was Here, that's kind of what I think he can do. Now, I know that's lofty, kind of lofty there, because I believe Jonathan Allen had like 19 or 21 tackles for a loss one year. I don't know that Michael's going to do that because Georgia plays guys so much and they rotate so much, but I think he can put up a monster season, from that position like few can.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I set the number kind of low, I guess, just because based on last year, Michael had 4.5. And it's just that no-name defense. I don't know. Maybe I can't escape that mentality, and I think that it's just going to be spread amongst a bunch of different guys. But maybe Michael breaks out and just has an Aziz junior year type of season.
It wouldn't shock me if like we look back and it's like, man, he only had 3.5 sacks this year, but he was really good.
I think he'll have more than that, for the record. Yeah. Obviously. All right, I'll hop into. All right, here's DawgsHQ&A. What is something Georgia could currently do that it has not already done that would solidify us as a dynasty? I mean, I think the three-peat is the most easy answer. I guess if that's not what you're looking for, winning 3 titles in 4 years. If it doesn't work out this year, I mean, they're knocking on the door of the dynasty talk right now, and they're everybody's sweetheart, except for Reese Davis, who, if a Georgia fan sees him, I hope you're wearing a metal hat because they're going to try to scalp you for not putting them number 1 overall. But other than that, man, everyone is picking the Dogs.
I mean, realistically, too, people listen. The hype is what the hype is, and so people are going to be disappointed if Georgia doesn't do it for a third straight time. But realistically, I think going back to the playoff solidifies where you are. I mean, ultimately, I think that's where you got to get back to. Now, it's tough to win there because you're going to be going up against some similarly talented teams, and it got tight with OSU last year for sure. So, to me, though, getting back, keeping yourself in that hunt is base, and coming off of the 2 national championships, I think that continues that.
The only way you're getting to dynasty status in short order is you got to win it this year. I mean, even getting back, I think, folks are going to still say, well, you got to win 3 out of 5. That's a dynasty. And I agree. I do kind of agree with that. I mean,
but you've got a chance to get 3 out of 5. I mean,
3 out of 3.
I mean, and that goes into the overall resume. Those are kind of tiebreakers when you start talking about dynasties.
Right.
you're like, hey man, they've made the playoffs in 4 straight. Let's say Georgia just makes the playoff this year, and then they don't win it, but they make it next year and they win it. Well, then you start to say that, hey, that's among the best 4-year runs in the history of the sport.
Yes.
That's where you get to with that. But I think Georgia can win it, and then they're a dynasty without question.
Yeah.
They're a dynasty that lasts for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's the way you get there. The only other way is to like bring in Red Panda or Savannah Bananas to do something at halftime. I mean, those are the things you can control.
Have the Bananas play a game while the Redcoats are on the field.
Yeah,
Red Panda really, given where Georgia is as a football program right now, I agree with you. I think take it really over the top. If you put Red Panda out in front of Sanford Stadium, it would go wild. You'd probably get a louder cheer for that than anything that you're going to get at a home game this year, given how bad the schedule is.
I think they need to be working the phone. I don't know if Red Panda can do grass though. I think she's like the anti Lionel Messi. Like she has to have some sort of surface down there.
Tire on that thing, man. She can go out there and chug her.
She'll get an all terrain on that on that unicycle, baby.
All right, and last one here. I'm going to have a recruiting question for you, Roos, when we wrap up the show. Nervous or excited for Bobo to be calling plays? I don't think Roe's going to really answer that one. I'm excited.
I mean, I don't know what I am. I mean, I just don't think a whole lot's going to change. Honestly, I'm not nervous at all. I kind of know what's coming, and what's coming is, if it's not just an absolute 5-alarm grease and tire fire combined in one that'll melt your face off if you're within 10 feet of it, then it's going to be, we've took a step back. Mm-hmm. There won't be any consideration as to, oh man, they lost, 2 stud offensive tackles with a lot of experience, and they lost a really good receiving running back in Kenny McIntosh, and they lost a big-time tight end in Darnell Washington, and they lost maybe the greatest quarterback in UGA history, probably the greatest quarterback in UGA history in Stetson Bennett. It'll just all be Bobo, because you got to pick up where Georgia left off or you're a failure. And I just think I think there's a contingent, and I don't think it's super small either. Just in talking to people, it surprised me, just face-to-face conversations with more casual Georgia fans. It has surprised me how many people were like, they brought that Bobo back, So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of angst there. There are a lot of people waiting for that first opportunity to kind of get after him. And honestly, I've said this from the jump, and I'll say it again. I think it is a very ballsy move. I believe there are honestly coaches out there that would have probably been like, that were in Bobo's situation, that would be like, I don't know if I'd want this job, because of the fact that, coming back and kind of leaving the way he left and it not working out. I just think there's a lot of different ways this can go down where it's not as, shiny for him. But I do have confidence in him. I think he's a very good play caller, a very good putter together of game plans. And, I think he learned a lot under Todd Monken, and the offense itself is not going to change a whole lot.
I'm excited. I'll be honest with you, partly because I want to see if Mike Bobo can prove people wrong. I think that's a fun storyline this year, man, because it can only really go one of two ways, like you said. I mean, it's either going to be love or hate, and he's not going to get a lot of the middle ground. But if he does prove people wrong, I think that's going to be fun to watch. And then the other part of it that excites me is to see Mike Bobo operate with the talent that he's got around him. And I think that's what's really interesting and really intriguing about that. I know that that's kind of been talked about a lot, but to me, that's exciting, because he was doing some pretty big numbers at Georgia prior with talent that is not comparable to what they have now. And so how does he operate with pieces like that? At the end of the day, I think it's probably just going to be, I think it'll probably feel kind of milquetoast a little bit, because I think it's just going to be a lot of what you saw before.
Well, with the schedule, man, keep coming back to that. The schedule is not the make or break is going to be in the SEC championship in a playoff game. If Georgia makes those, maybe at Tennessee if you get in kind of a shootout situation. But when are they going to get tested? Like, that's what I'm really just wondering if that's going to happen.
Man, I gotta speak to my man Dylan Brooks here because Georgia was fine in the red zone last year. I'm not saying they weren't very good in the red zone. I don't think Georgia was elite in the red zone here, and I'm trying to find the number here. I'm not Palmer Toms, so give me a moment.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they were good. They were great at scoring in the red zone. It was just a matter of scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And listen, Georgia's touchdown percentage had ranked them 6th in the SEC last year, behind Tennessee, behind Mississippi State, behind LSU, behind South Carolina, and behind Alabama. Georgia only scored less than 69% of the time touchdowns in the red zone. Now, they got there a lot. They kicked 24 red zone field goals. But I think that's something Bobo could improve upon. I've just got more concern about the quarterback position and the lack of experience there than I have anything about Bobo.
Sure.
Because Hudson Mason, Bobo won a lot of games with Hudson Mason at quarterback.
Sure did.
And an offensive line that had 1 draft pick.
Put up a lot of points with Hudson Mason.
Yeah, and he did some good things. I mean, Georgia's offense was pretty solid. Georgia's offense was pretty good in 2010 when Aaron Murray was the starting quarterback and it was his first year. They did a really good job that year. They just couldn't stop anybody. 2013 with a senior at quarterback in Aaron Murray, they did a phenomenal job. But I'm more concerned about the quarterback position, I think, than I am Mike Bobo as the offensive coordinator. I think he's proven he can do a good job. And that's what this team needs. This team needs a good offense. I'm not saying it has to be elite or otherworldly. I just think they have to be really good on offense.
Yeah. To your point about him having the balls to come back, I think that speaks to this narrative that he knew something was different, fundamentally different and better about his other situations. Rusty and I talked about this over the weekend, is the defense. He's got a defense that can put the nail in the coffin. And he's never had that. And Cowboy Jay brings that up. Somebody brought up I think it was one of our YouTube comments, that the new clock rule may kind of put some handcuffs on Bobo. So that may be something to keep an eye on. I don't know how it's going to ultimately affect the game, but that could be a factor as well. Big factor for us around here is the fine team over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make some resilient shorts, and I'll tell you, I would be wearing them right now if my baby hadn't just puked all over them moments before the show. But we do love the Bird Dogs in all the colors and all the styles. And if you go to birddogs.com right now with the checkout code DAWGS, or just type in birddogs.com/dogs, it's on your screen right now, you will get a complimentary hat with your checkout. It's a dry fit hat. It's pretty short. It's pretty sweet, pretty, efficient for whatever you want to do outside. You can play golf in it, and it's all yours with the checkout code DAWGS, whether you're buying the Uncle Bucks, the Forrest Pumps, the Derek Baggins, the Art Fart Knockers, whatever you want to check out there. I think we got the Duffy the Vampire Slayers. What did y'all get?
I got the camo ones, and I think the Slick Rickies there.
I didn't know you got camos.
Oh yeah, I got the light blue ones and the kind of charcoal colored ones.
I will say I wore the polo last night.
Yeah,
I think it's sick, dude. I wore that's an awesome shirt.
I'll say the polo fits a tad bit small, just a little bit on the tight side for the because I normally wear like an XL on a polo and then like a double X in a t-shirt. Yeah, man, it's hugging. It's hugging.
So maybe size up a little bit, but like all their products, that lining they have in the shorts, I don't know what it is about it. If I'm not wearing Bird Dogs now, I want to wear like swim trunks around the house, but they're nowhere near as comfortable as Bird Dogs. It's just, I don't know how they did it. I think they had some people at NASA help them build it. It's state of the art stuff. birddogs.com/dogs. Get your hat, get your shirts, get your shorts. It is a lovely product. All right. I told you we were going to talk about Ellis Robinson, and he got the highly coveted 5-star plus status at On3. What does that mean, Jake Roos?
That means that he is ranked as a 5-star by every major recruiting service out there. So 247, ESPN, and Rivals, as well as On3, all have him in the 5-star ranking. And that's pretty rare area to be in. I think that there are 10 guys, if I'm not mistaken, that are there now with Ellis in that ranking. And, Georgia has 3 of the 10. Nobody else has more than 1. So that's pretty impressive. But Ellis, I was kind of surprised he wasn't there already. The Rivals ranking on him was just a little bit low. He was still their number 1 cornerback, but in their latest update, he climbs up the board. To me, what's really impressive about this, and it's not the case with all of these guys out there, but what's impressive to me about Ellis is that he's the number 1 position. He's the number 1 player at the position across all boards. That shows to me that in what can be a pretty subjective world, that a lot of people are seeing the exact same thing. And that's pretty scary. And I think that that's where you get into some of that rare air. Even with the designation of the 5-star plus, it's not always the case that a guy is number 1 at his position across all 4. The fact that this guy is, I think, really points to his future. It tells you something pretty strong about him, because there's a lot of great, On3, I think our team is the best, but there's great evaluators at all of these sites, man. And I think the fact that they're all seeing the same thing and saying it's a no-brainer, slam dunk, this guy is the number 1 player at his position, it really speaks to the level that Ellis Robbins is playing. And as you said earlier, Ro, seems pretty well prepared to come in and make that jump quickly. Now, he's got a row to hoe with the guys ahead of him. There's no question about that. But he's going to be ready to challenge when he arrives in Athens. No question about it.
Yeah, I like him a lot as a prospect. I'm sorry, I was a little bit distracted by this fact that somebody posted this on our board. This I hate to take away from Ellis Robinson. You're awesome, Ellis. This James T. Yoder, mouth breather on Twitter, is trying to say that had DJ Turner made the tackle on Quentin Johnson on that 3rd and 7, that Michigan wins the national championship. And his reasoning is they would have advanced and they would have beat Georgia because they beat Ohio State more than Georgia did. That they want to. Do they want to cross-reference TCU scores there too? Because
that's how sports works, though. It's only about your team.
I don't know if the TCU cross-reference works. They really need to try and stop people like that on Twitter. I'm cool with the trolls and the Russian bots and things like that, but morons like him and that crazy person, that Sam Block or whatever his name was from Ohio State last year in the playoff. I don't know if y'all saw that cat. I mean, somebody need to put him in a rear naked choke, because he needed a little less oxygen to the brain. He had way too much going. But man, I tell you what, these Big Ten folks are different. That's for sure.
They need their own app.
I get it, man. Hurt feelings.
Ellis Robinson's a stud, though.
Ellis Robinson. Listen, Ellis Robinson ain't going to make it easier to beat Georgia. I can promise you that.
No. A little more difficult. I've said it over and over again. He reminds me of, like, as a prospect coming out, as Vernon Hargraves. And I thought the world of that kid. I thought he was amazing at Florida. It didn't quite turn out as well for him in the NFL as I would have thought it would. I think Ellis is a bigger guy just in general.
What do you think about that J.C. Horn comparison down there?
Yeah, I think that's solid. I was never blown away with J.C. Horn in college. I thought he was a good cornerback, but I could understand why he's drafted so high, because he ran well and his size was projectable. I understood that. But I think Ellis Robinson is a very, very rare talent at cornerback. I think he's one of those guys that he's not quite Tyson Campbell freakish athleticism, but he's kind of in that same, he's kind of in his league, while also kind of having maybe a DeAndre Baker type sensibility of playing the position, which was absolutely elite. I mean, DeAndre was a 5'11", long, ran well, but not super well, but just, had a natural ability to play the cornerback position like few do. And that's why he was so successful. But I think Ellis kind of has a really incredible combination of those two things.
And I think too, what people don't always consider about Ellis, although they should, is whatever you think about IMG Academy, and people have strong opinions on that program, but at the end of the day, IMG Academy is playing some of the best teams in the nation. This kid is getting tested week in and week out during his season. He got tested week in and week out last year. He's getting players. I mean, the guys he's going against in practice are as good as players anywhere in the country. So he's playing really high level competition and really honing his game. And I think that that's something that only speaks further to his ability and what he's going to be able to do at the next level, because he's not going to be unprepared for the level of competition that he's going up against, in my opinion.
And the fact that he's got a 2-syllable first name, it fits right into Simon and Garfunkel's song, and you can just say, "Hey, Ellis Robinson." It's gonna work, you know?
I had never thought about that, but we will.
Does the same for
Branson's
the same way, dude. Roderick is not though. Roderick, just you gotta rush it a little bit. It doesn't sound quite as good.
Are we allowed to call Roderick Robinson Hot Rod, or is that Rodrigo's forever?
Yeah, that works.
I like Ramrod, dude. I think we call him Ramrod.
Ramrod.
I mean, that's how he's going to be used. So yeah.
Last thing on Ellis Robinson. There's your guy, Roos.
Yeah, no question, man. Listen, and I've got something coming here soon. I've been trying to get all my thoughts out on this one, but I'm writing a piece. Listen, we were in a different spot 2 months ago, and actually even about 6 weeks ago when I wrote a piece on, Fran Brown and Will Muschamp just must be out smoking cigars. It's a little different now. I mean, the safety situation has changed, and the couple of guys have moved on. They don't necessarily have to take a guy, but the guys that they have, 2 top 100 corners, including I think DeMello Jones is the number 2 corner in the state of Georgia for the class, if I'm not mistaken. Really, really impressive job, man. And I'll tell you this, I have no doubt in saying this. I do not believe Ellis Robinson would be a Georgia commit if Fran Brown were not the cornerbacks coach.
Something about that guy, man. Message board for you, Jake Roos. Does Georgia get LJ McCray and Chris Cole?
I feel a lot better about Chris Cole. I'll say that. I do think that they're still the team to beat for Cole. Tennessee's going to be tough in there too. That'll be an interesting one to watch as it comes closer to decision time. And then you look over at McCray, man, I feel like Georgia's in a really good spot. Everybody I've talked to seems to suggest that that's the case. Simultaneously, though, he is a Florida guy, and the Gators have been really thick in this, and were considered the favorite for a long time, if they're not still the favorite. Georgia's probably neck and neck, I would say, and maybe holds a slight edge. But when it's that tight for a guy, I think you always got to wonder about that. So I say yes on Cole, and I'll say I feel good on McCray. But because it's not happening in short order, that leaves a lot of time on the clock, and that may not work to Georgia's advantage. I think that they probably get one of him or Aiden Breland, though, in the end. And that's neither of those is a consolation prize.
All right. And obviously, with Georgia missing out on Williams Nwaneri, the Mizzou NIL topic has gotten a whole new set of eyeballs on it from a lot of Georgia fans and a lot of fans who are kind of learning how this Missouri NIL deal is potentially going to shake things up a little bit in college football recruiting.
Yeah, I think it's a real thing, man. I do think it's giving these kids a lot to think about. You're hearing Ryan Wingo's name circled a lot with Mizzou right now, too, the 5-star receiver from Missouri that Georgia was in on for a long time. They still are, but I don't consider them a favorite or anything like that. But yeah, this law is really interesting, man. I think that it changes a lot, and it gives those Missouri kids a lot to think about. And for me, what's going to be interesting to see is how does Missouri's season go, and does that affect Eli Drinkwitz's, job status? And if it does shake that up, then what happens to these kids, and what happens with this money, and what happens with these things they're signing, and how does that all work? I don't know. And I feel like if Drinkwitz stays, I don't think you got to worry about it. If he doesn't, if he's asked to leave, then what happens? I think that's a big question. And I'm pretty intrigued to see how it plays out. Because somebody at some point is going to have to fight this battle where they say, you didn't live up to your end of your NIL bargain. That's coming down the pipe. We all know that, I think, that eventually somebody's going to have to set a precedent and do it. Nobody wants to be that team, though. Nobody wants to be the guy to do that. And so I'm just interested to see if they're able to keep everything together ultimately. I don't know. I don't have the answers on that one, man. And I'm as intrigued as anybody to see how it plays out.
I do know this. I think Missouri getting Williams Nwaneri and Wingo is going to have a similar effect. And stick with me here in NIL that Bear Bryant's trip to Los Angeles to see to visit with Coach McKay way back when had on the sport in that area, and as far as integration goes, because Bear Bryant visited. He knew that USC had way so far superior athletes with African Americans and white people being integrated in that whole in that school. And eventually he came back. He played that game. He wanted to see that Alabama was overmatched. I believe they lost by 21 points. They got just road graded, and that was a kind of a monumental moment for the sport, just in terms of integration in the South. Because Alabama did that very soon after. I mean, I think this is going to have a similar effect on the way NIL is used, because you're absolutely kidding yourself if you don't think every state in the country is not working super hard to get an NIL law very similar to this one.
You better believe all the coach. You better believe every coach in the state is calling these guys and saying, "We got to get this done, man." Look,
Kirby's going to be outside of the Georgia Gold Dome with the picket sign, man. He's going to be 100%.
See, Tomahawk Dog over here in the comments says probably once he starts drawing the check, it's done deal, at least for a season. But who knows? And that's really what. At the end of the day, man, it's like, remember when we used to think that like the national letter of intent was like ironclad, and then that was able to be broken. Once lawyers get involved, man, this gets murky water.
Well, the national letter of intent is still kind of ironclad. You still got to get left out of it. The problem is the national letter of intent is they let guys out of it for the same reason that if this kid really wanted to push, they'd probably still let him out of it.
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Because nobody has the balls to stick it to these kids.
I agree.
No, I'm not saying they should.
Sure.
But
no, rightfully so, because you're going to listen. The PR you're going to get if you're the team that does that is going to be miserable. It's going to follow you around. Every coach in America is going to point at you. You're gonna. That's an uphill battle if ever there was one. If you're that team.
And to counter the point that I just made, my own point at all is if Williams Nwaneri backs out of this, I mean, he could serve as a dentist right away and snatch every tooth out of that law immediately. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I mean, it just doesn't even matter. I mean, all of a sudden, kids are using Missouri. In-state kids are using Missouri to make that happen.
Yeah.
But
go to Missouri, hit the portal.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, for kids who know where they want to go, how valuable would a law like that be at Georgia or Alabama or somewhere like that? Like if you're sitting there with a somebody that's committed early, like a Malachi Tolliver, for instance. I'm not saying
Malachi Starks last year.
Yeah, Malachi Starks, right? Yeah,
Malachi Starks.
That's a great example. But even Malachi Tolliver, like a local kid, car dealership, come up there, sign. Hey, his kid signed with Georgia. He's going to be up here doing this and that. I mean, shoot, it may make him $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I don't know. Malachi Starks probably could have made $500,000.
Yeah.
That's, just all the different things he could have done around the Athens area. So yeah, you're right. And this is a real interesting thing to see get navigated ultimately.
But, too, the thing about it is to some degree, like, I don't know, man, it's like the idea of if the guy goes there and sucks, can they get their money back out? No, I don't think they can, because we're treading the finest of fine lines of like, this is pay for play.
Well, I think what's going to happen.
If you don't come to Mizzou, we were never going to give you that money anyway. We didn't want to give you that money. You better come perform for Mizzou, or else the money was moot all along. That's where we're the gray, murky territory, man.
Well, Bruce, I don't think anyone's going to take the money back from, Williams if that happens to him.
Probably
I'm not saying it will. I don't think it will.
But
they're gonna withhold it from the next guy.
You're bingo. Exactly.
2025, 2026.
They're not.
Those are the kids that are going to get kicked in the shorts from this because they're going to learn their lesson on it.
Yeah, they're not answering the phone when Missouri calls next time.
Yeah, Taco Bell is going to stop putting the sauces out for everybody to get a hold of. Somebody took all the sauces, and now they're just like, we can't put these things out no more.
Perfect analogy.
You know, like
I'm that guy, dude.
We gotta these dudes are taking our sauces for Taco Tuesday at their own house, and it's screwing some stuff up. He's gonna mess it up for everybody.
I got a drawer full of fire sauce right now.
Hey, I will say this about Williams' recruitment, right? Because his name just tongue ties me every time. I think it's going to eventually mess up my brain. I also think a big factor in his recruitment is this whole thing like wore his crew down, okay, like down to the nub. And I think ultimately it was a fatigue issue. And I think they're just like, man, we're not cut out for this. We're not cut out for this jet setting all across the country stuff. Let's stay close to home. And it's not super close to home. You've been to the Kansas City area and then tried to get to Columbia. It ain't easy, but it's a lot easier than having to go here and there and everywhere to try and, to try and get to every game. They'll be able to see him a lot more, there in Columbia than they would most places.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, let's chop some wood, guys. One of y'all can take it. I'm still working on mine.
Ro?
I had one earlier, I swear to God, and I have lost it. I got it. We're talking about Mount Rushmore on the board, okay? We're talking about Mount Rushmore of Georgia players on our board. And, man, I tell you what, I don't think there's a guy in Georgia lore that I think gets forgotten. And the thing that really brought it home for me was thinking about Ladd McConkey. Because Champ Bailey, all right, back in, I believe it was 1998, had a season where he averaged more receiving yards per game. I can't remember if he had more receiving yards than Ladd McConkey did, period, but he had more receiving yards per game than Ladd McConkey had as a wideout. Oh, and he was also an All-American defensive back at the same time. One of the greatest seasons I think that gets forgotten in Georgia history. And a guy that deserves to be on Georgia's Mount Rushmore, I would say, if you're trying to make it even offense, defense, you're picking four players. I think you got to look at Pollock and Champ Bailey on the defensive side for me. And you look at Stetson Bennett and Herschel Walker on the offensive side. I think Brock Bowers has a chance, if you're keeping it 2-2, to usurp Stetson Bennett this year. But, man, Champ Bailey, just thinking back about that, it got me thinking about it today. Having a 700 and something yards receiving in a season while also playing cornerback, playing over 100 plays a game every single Saturday. Now when your defense, not one player, but when your defense has to play 70, 80 plays, how did they do it? Champ used to do it 100 times.
Champ and
Georgia wasn't playing at night a lot either. They sucked and they were playing in the day a lot. So
Champ and Charlie Trippy, two really just brutally tough dogs out there playing every single play. I think Charlie Trippy played 90-something plays in that Rose Bowl. I don't know. I just remember they're linked in Georgia history because they just never left the field. All right, I'll chop some wood about some sports docs that are on Netflix. Johnny Football, if y'all have watched that, it's okay. It's by this series that's called Untold. And they're also doing the Florida Swamp Kings that comes out a week from tonight. The Johnny Football doc didn't tell me anything that I didn't already know about Johnny Football. So I've gotten really excited about this Florida documentary on that legendary 08 team that's legendary for all the wrong reasons other than Tim Tebow. And he's probably a wrong reason to a lot of y'all watching too. I don't think we're going to learn anything that we didn't already know. So I don't know. I'm a little bummed about that. So I'm chopping wood about, I just wish people would make some documentaries that actually tell us things, especially if your documentary is called Untold. I'd like to hear, maybe that's why it's called Untold, is because there's a lot that's left untold. I was pretty disappointed by the Johnny Football documentary.
I will say that I didn't know that their third string or walk-on quarterback was providing piss for Johnny Manziel. For Johnny Manziel, not Mansell. He's not related to Rusty. Johnny Manziel. But the funniest part about that is, they're doing the camera work and they're flashing to this guy and they're flashing to that guy. And I think his agent or somebody says, then we found out that his third string quarterback was providing piss for him. And they flash over to Johnny Manziel and he's like,
yeah.
When he throws up the zero,
yes,
how much film he watched as a pro,
he was a good sport about that whole documentary. It just continually makes him look like garbage.
Yeah,
yeah. I hope he
sport about it.
I don't know, man. He seems like he's still got some demons for sure. So I hope he figures it out.
If you're looking for a good documentary, there's only one episode out so far, but Telemarketers on Max.
I tried, man. I couldn't get through the first 5 minutes. Those people make me really uncomfortable.
Oh man, that was the point, dude. It is uncomfortable as hell. You want to talk about not knowing stuff, man? That's a wild piece. I can't.
Yeah, my man that was just stoned out of his mind in the car, like in the first couple minutes of the whistleblower. I was done. I was like, I can't watch this. I was trying to watch it at the gym. So
Telemarketers.
It's on Max. I loved it.
Okay.
I'm fascinated with it. It's everything that I thought telemarketing was, but I get to see it in real life. So it's incredible. All right. I'm chopping wood tonight about a guy that you want to talk about overlooked. We mentioned some overlooked guys. I hated to see Richard LeCounte get waived by the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I understood why it happened. I get it. It was not the greatest preseason showing for Richie. But Richard LeCounte is a guy that I don't think people give enough credit to for the impact that he had. We hear a lot about, Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy, Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel. People forget Richard LeCounte was Kirby Smart's first commit when he took the job. He was the guy that got this whole ball rolling. It really, you wondered who was going to be the guy. He broke that seal quick. Richard jumped on board and said, I love Kirby over there. I always wanted to go to Georgia. Perfect marriage. And he was a Pied Piper for that class, man. Richie was one of the great Bulldogs, in my opinion, of all time. Not maybe for on-field performance. You're not going to blow you away with stats or anything like that. But for what Richard LeCounte has meant to this era, man, damn good dog badge for sure. A lot of love for Richie. Hope his next move is even better than his previous ones have been. And we'll be rooting for Richard LeCounte for the rest of the time.
Go back and watch that 2017 Notre Dame game when he was a true freshman, and there is a third down that he stops Notre Dame cold. And he's a true freshman out there playing at Notre Dame. That is the play that I will always think of first. He had some other ones too, but that one was pretty strong for a true freshman on the road in that environment. Very important season too. Y'all hit like and subscribe on the Georgia Show, 8:30, right here, every Wednesday, every Sunday. Go back and watch Bark After Dark from last night. Sorry, my contact is trying to jump out of my eye. Go back and watch that from Monday night. Bill Shanks, hilarious storyteller on there. I know our 478 people know about Bill. Check that out. And check us out over at DawgsHQ&A. A lot going on over there. On our message board, and some premium content too that we couldn't even talk about tonight because it is untold. We'll see you back here Sunday night. Appreciate y'all.